All right, let's go ahead and get started. So incredibly thrilled that you're here to join us today. I'm Justin Clifford. I work at Bereave, and I'll be your host today. Loss Leaders is a program really centered around how companies could and we think should step up when loss occurs in the lives of their employees during those crisis moments. And the reason that we're doing these programs particular is because we're on a mission to help companies provide a better bereavement experience when their teammates suffer a loss. And in that pursuit, we are incredibly fortunate to get to meet incredible people and meet incredible companies that can bring so much education to the business leaders that are working to really build a more compassionate and empathetic workplace. So this is our effort to get them in front of you. As you can see, people coming in from Washington, Denver, Canada's here because Heather's here. Columbia River Gorge in Oregon / Washington, kind of just standing on the line with Matt Trosky. The chat is open. We'll monitor for questions as we go. We'll do about 45 minutes or so and have the recordings available on LinkedIn. You'll find it pretty quickly. And then we'll download and make sure that we get them on our website and emailed to you. Quick reminder that this program is SHRM PDC approved. And we'll get that code out at the end. If you're looking for it, we'll also include it in the follow-up. So super lucky today to be joined by Jamy Conrad, who's the VP of People at TrustRadius in Austin. Jamy and TrustRadius are also Bereave customers. Thank you, Jamy. Jamy is a CAB member at Tag for HR. She's a founding member of Hacking HR's Experts Council. Nearly 2 decades of HR-related experience. And I wanted a list of the certifications that Jamy has pursued, but there are just too many of them. We would take 7-8 minutes just listing those. But the one we are going to talk about today is Jamy's mental health first aid certification through the National Council for Mental Well-Being. Jamy, thank you for being here. Welcome to Loss Leaders.
Hey, Justin. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I love what you guys are doing over there at Bereave.
Yeah, thank you for that. And thank you for your support and your insight that you've provided us along the way. Jamy, you've been in HR or people-related roles for about 2 decades. Curious, like what changes have you witnessed over that time related to how businesses think about mental health?
So the key for me is the 2 decades part, right? So there's a lot of transitions that we've all gone through in the last 2 decades, and more importantly, the last 5 years. But going back further than that, I think there was a shift from we don't want anything to do with anything that has to do with anything that has to do with mental health. So let's just pretend it doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. Let's make it as awkward as possible so that nobody talks about it. And then what we've seen happen over the last 2 decades and really since the pandemic is this is becoming more and more okay to talk about, not just in the workplace, but in general in society. And I grew up in a traditional, I think some of those traditional, you respect your elders, don't speak unless spoken to, like some of those types of upbringings. And the dirty laundry was never discussed. It didn't matter what it was. And mental health was definitely included in that. And I think that we've started since the pandemic because it hit so many of us all at the same time, all in the same way. And we all had so many varying reactions and responses to that now we can't help but talk about it. There's a lot of things that play into how a business looks at mental health and how they react to employees going through a situation that requires them to get involved. But I really am impressed with the shift that we're able to make, especially in these last 5 years, that just allow for those conversations to not be such a stigma-driven conversation. They're still awkward. We still don't enjoy them. I don't think we'll ever enjoy them, but at least there's an awareness there where it's becoming more safe to have those conversations. And I think that's the key part of where we're going. And we're brand new in that transition. So first decade, I don't feel like there was a lot of change, but definitely since the pandemic, we've seen some really good strides in this area.
Yeah. I think the fact that everybody gets hit at the same time with something, it in that manner just becomes much more relatable. I think it is kind of at least what I felt during that time.
Mhm.
I had a team of about 30 people, and I talked to every one of them about what they were feeling, and I kind of looked up one day and said, "Hey, where do I go?" And it turns out I had places to go. But once you get to the top of a company, you've hopefully had a group of people who was not just bringing awareness, but also recognized some level of responsibility there. And you talked about awareness. Can you differentiate between the company's willingness to be aware about mental health, and then maybe how that translate into any responsibility that employers might feel on the topic?
Um, I find it interesting that employers may still consider the fact that they don't have a responsibility to at
Mm,
least encourage some of those conversations. It's hard when, I'm very passionate about empathetic leadership. I'm very
mhm,
passionate about being able to support human beings in the workplace and what that means, how that translates, and how we operationalize some of that as businesses. And I think that's really important for HR leaders to think about when you think about, it's not that grandiose project, it's operationalizing those key points along the way so that you're able
mhm.
to show up when the need arises. But from just like a business aspect, I think you posted this morning that 1 in 5 U.S. adults experience mental illness or is affected by that, and depression is the leading diagnosis in that worldwide. We've seen since the pandemic suicide rates go up, and we've seen addiction rates go up, and claims for anxiety and prescription medications, skyrocketed. And when we go back to having, we all experience the same thing in the same way, or with this around the same parameters, but then we responded differently.
Mhm.
There are people that never had or weren't aware of any mental health issues that they were experiencing prior to the pandemic, that then had no idea how to navigate through some of those challenges
Sure.
during the pandemic and since then. And so when we see an increase in businesses with our employees, medical claims are increasing, addiction rates are increasing, all those things, that absolutely impacts your productivity. It
Mhm.
absolutely impacts your presenteeism, your absenteeism, how you're able to support employees. I think Gallup put out a $47.6 billion in lost productivity due to poor employee mental health. That's what
Mm.
it cost the U.S. economy in 2022. And that's a little dated, but not that far off. And from what I've seen, it's just continued to increase rather than decrease. And so there's all kinds of ways that you can look at it, from ROI, from you know uh, the presenteeism, the cost of lost productivity. I can't help but just say it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
We're all
Yeah.
in this together, and there's some aspect of it's time for us to look at this as a human experience and a human response, and not just as a business response. But there's absolutely a business case to be made there.
Mhm. Yeah. You said specifically you believe in empathetic leadership. That was evident very quickly in getting to know you a few months ago. I'm curious, kind of, there are people who definitely lean P&L. There are definitely people who, on the other end of the spectrum, that lean human. Um, I'm curious, like, what has driven you to think about empathetic leadership in the way that you do, and still kind of keep your mind on the business case at the same time?
One of the struggles that I feel like the HR profession in the general has had over the last couple decades, or in general, is being seen as a business leader and not just an HR leader. And so it's important that we're able to straddle that line when it comes to, is it P&L, is it human, and that we understand both sides of it. So there's that aspect of it. But I think where the passion comes from is all of those conversations that are held in confidence with managers, with executives, with employees that don't tell anybody. I don't want to take any action. I don't want to do anything about it. I just need to talk to somebody, right? And so over the years, that develops into, well, it's not just an employee issue, and it's not just a leadership issue, and it's not just an executive issue. This is a business issue because it's happening at every single level within the organization. Mm-hmm. And so why not just allow for some visibility and some vulnerability? Because the only way that we can get through that is if we do allow for those conversations. We may not be able to address things head on 100% of the time, but we sure can create some really psychologically safe environments that allow for us just to touch the surface and get people pointed in the right direction as an organization, as a business, and as a business need, and not just try to pretend like it doesn't exist and push it aside, right? That, to me, is what the HR profession can continue to bring to the table on the business aspect, is leaning into the empathetic leadership, leaning into that human experience, because those are the things that are going to drive how you show up as a business, how successful you are. And there's correlations that the more engaged, the more inspired your employees are as human beings, the higher your productivity, the higher your revenue. Like there's already enough studies out there to make those business cases. And so how can we take these situations that we're working through every single day with employees at every level in our organization and bring them out in a healthy way so that we can talk through them and work through them and evolve together through them.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, and what I just heard is like that spectrum probably should be much, much smaller, because the human side is the P&L side and the P&L side is the human side.
And you can't, you don't have one without the other.
Right.
Or if you have one without the other, there's so much you're leaving on the table.
Yeah. I love that. Max Yoder, the former CEO and the co-founder of Lessonly, was with us several shows ago and alluded to his pursuit of psychological safety at work as correlation, at the very least, to the success of the company. Tough to pull out causation, I'm sure, and I'm sure some analysts could figure it out. But just hearing that, I was in that office enough to hear, Max specifically talk about therapy and his journey with therapy, and suddenly you've got 200 people looking around going, "Oh, Max goes to therapy and talks about therapy, so maybe I can talk about my journey."
It must be okay.
And just that topic alone, among many, many other life topics that were brought up, it made it okay to talk about. And it took away the stigma, it took away the tightness. And now you're talking about it in one-on-ones. You're talking about getting people resources. People are asking for resources. It was a really incredible experience from that psychological safety, from that taboo topic being brought up by a leader and talked about on a regular basis by a leader, and the impact that it had, I'll say, downstream.
Yeah, I would say that's part of what the decision-making process was for me to want to partner with Bereave, is that same mentality, right? It creates a structure to align language across the organization where we're all going through this. We know it's going to touch every single one of us at some point. And so I think it's going to make a big change in how we see and talk about and support death. Not necessarily because we're bad at it, probably the best I've ever seen in an organization already at supporting employees, but now it's opening it up even more. And my hope is that is less around, the impact that I can make at TrustRadius, and more around whether I like it or not, people are going to leave TrustRadius, and I sure hope that they take some of those things with them when they go, and expect that out of their next manager, out of their next employer, and we continue to have those conversations to make us all better.
Yeah, man, I love that. I haven't even thought about those threads, like bereave aside, those threads of making that conversation okay, any conversation, any tough, non-ceremonious conversation, because we seem to be really good at the ceremonious stuff.
Yeah.
Or pretty darn good at the ceremonious stuff. It's the non-ceremonious stuff, whether it's loss or mental health or financial distress or relationship distress or depression or whatever it is, right? That's when we start to clam up a little bit. But if we start talking about it today, think about that person going to the next organization. Think about that person becoming a company leader. Now those things start to develop much more of a societal shift. I'm really glad you brought that up. I'm, thinking in 24-hour blocks here, Jamy. So I appreciate you opening my eyes today. Let's turn a little bit to specifically mental health first aid. Let's just start with, what is it?
Well, I want to make sure I get it right. It's a mental health first aid certification from the National Council of Mental Wellbeing. It helps you to identify, understand, and respond. So just thinking about first aid in, if it's a physical situation, you get your first aid certification or your CPR certification from the Red Cross or an organization like that helps you to understand in the moment what's happening and how to respond appropriately. And so this certification for mental health is similar. It's an evidence-based early intervention course that teaches participants about mental health and substance abuse challenges, and then provides a framework for you to use when you're in those crisis moments to be able to navigate through them appropriately. It's not, I think for me, the reason that I wanted to was, I look back at some of the situations that when I talk about the different tiers, it's happening at the different tiers in the organization, and nobody is immune to these types of situations. And there's been multiple times in my career when I look back that I was like, man, I wish I would have said that differently, or I wish I would have noticed that different, quicker, or I wish I would have responded in a different way. And it helps to build my confidence to have this certification and go through this training, so that maybe next time, right, as we continuously evolve, all of us in our learnings, that next time I'll respond just a little bit differently, or maybe I'll be able to make an even bigger impact.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, it's amazing reflection. The fact that you're hanging on to some of those things that have happened and thinking about the way you responded. I mean, there are countless times that, managers don't get trained on this stuff.
Nope.
Right. They don't get trained on much on how to be managers, right? Let alone having these kind of conversations and being able to have just even the awareness and education. And then on top of that, a framework to be able to kind of work through those situations. Seems like it's been incredibly valuable. I'm curious, like, you made the decision. I think you became certified like last March. Is that about right? Okay.
Yeah, something like that.
Have you seen any changes in yourself as a leader, or in your ability or willingness to respond the way you've responded? Are there any anonymous types of examples that you might be able to speak to, or just generalizations if that's more comfortable?
I know I've had not at TrustRadius, but with a peer in the HR community was dealing with a situation with one of their employees, and was just kind of like, I have no idea how to navigate that. And so taking some of the training that I learned and applying it in that conversation was able to help her with creating a framework that she felt comfortable at least putting in place. It, obviously it's not meant to be a hero type framework, sure, or, anything like that, but just giving her some of that. Okay, I can take a deep breath. I'm a human being. I've not been trained in this either. So
Mm-hmm.
let's see if we can come up with something that just allows me to navigate it in a way that I know I'm trying to do the best that I can. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm hopefully not falling short of what
Right.
that employee needs. And that really focuses around getting them the resources that they need. You don't have to have
Mm-hmm.
all the answers. You don't have to know exactly what to do. But if you've got those resources at your fingertips, it
Mm-hmm.
makes it a lot easier in that framework. And so I think that was probably one of the most impactful situations that I've went through. And that employee, you know, I've kept in touch with that peer. That employee has since gotten help. It was substance abuse. They've gotten the help they need. They're back to work. They're thriving. They're up for a promotion in this next performance review cycle. And so it's been really gratifying to know that this type of certification has helped, even if it's just one person.
Sure.
Right. This has been a very impactful response for that person. And then when you think about the ripple effect, right,
Mm-hmm.
all those threads, what's that going to create, and how far does that ripple effect go?
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, you're thinking of somebody in distress that, is now up for a promotion. I mean, I'm sure there are multiple tracks, but there's two tracks that I think of in those moments. And
Mm-hmm.
there's the rough track, or there's the successful track. And having people around you, and you may not even know it, but having people around you that are able to show up in those moments, and help promote, I mean, health and safety, first of all, but
Mm-hmm.
second of all, flourish, right? That's a pretty big gift.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when you think about mental health first aid, it's really easy, obviously, for me to think about going through my American Red Cross first aid several times in my life for various reasons. When you think of the mental health first aid, like how would you like promote it to somebody, to talk them into go doing it? Like, obviously I know that I have to be CPR certified in some situations. As a teacher, I needed to be CPR certified, right? I was kind of forced to do it. Other times I said, hey, I should probably do this because when we had children, I wanted to do it, right? I wanted to be extra ready. But if somebody is thinking about it, or maybe just hasn't considered or doesn't know about it, like, what are you
Mm-hmm.
saying to kind of help motivate them to go do that, outside of what you just said, of course, which is pretty motivating?
Well, first off, there's a lot of instructors out there that offer the certification training free. So
Mm,
there's not a financial barrier to
okay.
achieving the certification. There's also multiple ways to receive the certification and go through that training. They have in-person, classroom style. There's a combination of virtual and classroom. And then there's 100% virtual, that if you can't make it in person. So there's not a transportation barrier, right? And so they've done a
Mhm.
lot of things to help to take away some of those immediate challenges that could pose themselves. Um, and so I think that's part of it, right? Is making sure that there's not those situations that, as long as you can schedule it in sometime, and I know our calendars can be challenging as well, but like, as long as you can are willing to go through the effort to get signed up, there's really not a lot of barriers to doing it. And
Mhm.
then more on the why aspect, like we talked about, depression is a leading diagnosis. Substance abuse cases are up. 1 in 5 adults in the US dealing with mental health illness of some sort. We can't escape it,
Mhm.
right? As it being in the society that we're in, and just all that we've gone through, there's no escape of people. It's going to cross your path. There is no way that you can avoid it crossing your path in some way, shape, or form. And so while you may have situations that come up that it would be nice to have CPR, and training, and somebody's inevitably going to fall and break a leg, you're going to
Mhm.
want those first aid. Mental health should be viewed as no differently. You will
Mhm.
have situations in your life where somebody's going to be in a mental health crisis in your circle or close to you. And why not just be as prepared as possible to support them the best that you can?
Yeah. How close do you think we are to a situation where senior leaders at both small and large companies are making it mandatory?
I think we're a ways off, unfortunately,
Yeah.
but we're getting there. I think it's incremental. This is just one thing that you can put in place. There's a lot of different things, like partnering with companies like Bereave and various aspects. There's incremental change. The important part is whatever that change you want to see, make it happen, right? Be a part of it, be the solution, bring the solutions. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be a huge deal. But don't stop bringing your ideas. Don't stop bringing solutions that can help bring us together.
Yeah. I'm curious. I heard a story about a woman talking about her daughter. Actually, she told the story about her daughter becoming CPR certified, and her daughter was a teenager, but was entering rooms, very proud of it, entering rooms saying, "Hey, I'm CPR certified," right? And she just kept doing it over and over and over. And eventually all of her friends and people at school, would point her out and say, "Hey, she's CPR certified, so she can keep us safe." Uh, how have you gone about, if you have, I'm making an assumption that might not be accurate, but how let me ask it this way: how do you go about making sure that people understand that at the very least that TrustRadius or other places that you are involved with know that you have this certification and that you can be a resource?
I haven't, actually. This is one of those things that, while I'm very public about it on social media, that I'm very proud of this certification. I support this certification. People need to be recertified regularly as we make new advances in the diagnoses of some of these mental health illnesses. I think I have a challenge in touting my own accomplishments, and this is no different. But it's also not why I chose it. I chose it to help me feel more confident in these situations and to show up better in those times of crises that I need it. But I'm not afraid to back down. And if there is an opportunity for me to bring it into a conversation, I absolutely do.
Yeah, love that. Matt Trosky has a question. I'm going to put it up on the board here. Can you speak to the tough HR balancing act of addressing mental health and following policies such as impaired work, maladaptive behaviors, etc.?
These are what your leave of absence policies are for. These are why you have the conversations. It could be an ADA issue. There are laws that talk through supporting mental health and the disabilities associated with it, and employers being required to do so. It's definitely a tightrope walk, no matter what the situation is. And probably one of the most challenging aspects of being an HR and people leader is knowing that the weight of those conversations and the decisions around them are your responsibility. And sometimes you're going to make the right decision, and sometimes you're going to wish you made the right decision. And there are it's a tough balancing act, but it doesn't skirt the responsibility of being in the role that does have that responsibility. And I think that that's the more important part of, if you're an HR leader, then you need to lead through these situations, not manage them as they come up, right? And there's a big difference there. And so for me, the balancing act is in how much do I lean into the leadership aspect versus just the admin tasks that have been operationalized. And I think that's how you address some of those more challenging situations. If you can operationalize some of it, that takes away some of the risk. It takes away some of the balancing act. But then I need to lean into my leadership to really pull an employee, a manager, an organization through what that looks like. And that can be, here's our policy and here's how ridiculous I think it is. And here's the changes that I feel like need to be made as a result of that. And here's why.
That's awesome. I felt something there that, and I'm just going to say it. I feel like HR leaders, well, I know HR leaders in general are under-resourced, overworked, under-budgeted, all of those things, right? And something that you just said there made me feel like maybe HR leaders take on a lot of that burden to be that responsibility, and managers, the people managers, frontline managers, kind of delegate up in these situations versus being part of the solution. Right. That's an HR thing. Go talk to HR, right? Keep me at arm's distance. I manage a quota of salespeople, right? That's not what I'm here for. At what point, or maybe you've started to see this, have you started to see businesses through HR leaders start to equip managers with some of these tools and some of this guidance so that it's not all bubbled up and managers have more of a responsibility to be able to show up in these moments?
I think that takes us right back into the conversation we we're just having around leadership. I want my management team and my executive team to not punt it to me, but bring me into the conversation. And I want to be able to quarterback those situations, right? I've got the training, I've got the experience, I want to quarterback it. But being a quarterback also means that I've got a receiver to throw things to. I've got somebody blocking me along the way, right? And so there's a lot of different aspects to that. And when I have a situation come up, I very much am in partnership with that leader or that manager that has an employee experiencing it. I may be guiding them. I might be empowering them. I may be enabling them to do certain things, right? I'm the quarterback, but I may not be doing the actual things that need to be taken care of. And I think that's part of it. It's not that all of the weight of it falls on HR leaders, which I think we do a lot of in our role. We're responsible maybe for project managing, if we need to put it in a term that's not so emotional, right? But project manage through some of these things. And that includes, we're a team and we're in this together. And so it doesn't have to be just me. And if I'm struggling with a decision, I should have other people that I can turn to, whether that's a community, whether that's my CEO, whether that's an executive that's in the business. I should have people that I can turn to that, like, hey, I need to bounce this off of you. Here's what's happening. Here's, why it's happening. Here's what I'm thinking. What am I missing in that? And you can have those conversations without, breaching confidentiality or, breaching HIPAA or any of those things. You just have to practice at it.
Yeah. That's great. I'm thinking, there's, and, I'm going to try to take TrustRadius out of it for a second, but there's Jamy Conrad, VP of people, right? And sitting at an executive table, and you've got the executives around, and those people may or may not be certified, but if they are, and then that next layer of management is all certified in an environment like that, again, take TrustRadius out of it, but an environment like that where not only the HR leader is mental health certified, first aid certified, but all of the people leaders are certified, right? What changes do you start to see or hope for in a situation like that, assuming that could happen?
It takes out the what the heck is HR doing and why are they doing it, right? We've got a common language that we're working around. We have commonality in our goals associated with why did we get the first aid certification to begin with. So we've got goals that are aligned in that way. And then just how does that come across in your culture? You can't go through some of that training and not have just a little bit of it planted as a seed for how that impacts your culture and your human design and your future of work conversations and your business strategy, and then capacity conversations, right? It also has a ripple effect. And probably one of the key ways that we continue to bring it forward in businesses and break the stigma is to encourage these types of things to happen. If you can convince your executive team to all become first aid certified, mental health first aid certified, amazing. I was surprised that I had never heard of it when I worked in healthcare for 13 years. Never heard of mental health first aid certification.
Sure.
Get out of healthcare and ran into it in my network. It was like, oh, you know, the I wish I would have known then what I know now, you know?
Right. You have to leave healthcare to see it though, right?
Yeah.
You know, I kind of asked about like, you know, what's changed, examples maybe that you've gone through since being certified, but I'm curious, has anything changed in the way that you see your role as a people leader after becoming certified?
It's kind of twofold, a combination of things that we've already mentioned. One is I feel less pressure, right?
Okay.
Because I feel more confident and I have a higher level of conviction around it. I also feel more pressure because now that I know, I want it to have an impact and I want it to change how we're talking about it. And it influenced our strategy from a benefits standpoint. And, you know, it allowed for, let's think about ERG around mental health in just a little bit different way, right? What does that feel like? What does that look like? And then the responsibility that I feel like HR leaders have to the mentoring that they're doing with up and coming HR professionals and recent college grads and the pass it on aspect as leaders. It's not, you know, there's more than one way to get it in front of businesses and conversations. And it doesn't have to be taking it head on and fighting a battle. It can just be influencing in a way that makes it, this is standard. This is what's happening. And so I've thought about, you know, some of these learnings with the mental health first aid certification in that lens of, it doesn't have to be a big, huge program and I can take that pressure off, right? But boy, when I show up, I'm going to show up with guns a-blazing and, you know, we're going to make it impactful.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, you are certainly an impactful leader. I mean, if as long as you're walking the walk, the talk has always been great. And the things that you say, and like, I would love to have, you, as the people leader that I get to turn to, at work. And I mean, just maybe even community. So massive kudos to you for going through this, thinking the way you do. I'm curious, you know, you've got HR folks, you've got non-HR folks that are here today. But you've got an opportunity, I think, to leave a lot of people with some additional wisdom, because I think you are wise. So I'm using the word wisdom. What do you think is maybe most important, maybe in summary, for people to walk out of here with today?
Don't be afraid of it. I think a lot of times we shy away from those hard conversations because we don't feel confident. We don't, you know, it's awkward, like all those things, but don't be afraid of it. You know, I think that holds us back in a lot of different areas in business when it comes to the human aspect and the human design of the future of work. And so don't be afraid to just click that link that takes you to that website that offers those trainings and just check it out. And don't be afraid to, if that looks like something that could make a difference in your world for any reason, in any way, doesn't have to just be at work, sign up for that class and then maybe listen to that teacher and then maybe get that certification and take that exam and then maybe talk about it online that you did it, right? Just don't be afraid of taking that next step, whatever that looks like for you, because that's how we make change.
Yeah, I love that. That's so powerful. We will include the link, the certification link. I toyed around with it a little bit. It's really, really easy to find trainers in your area. You put in
It
your
is.
zip code. I mean, it's like finding a restaurant at Yelp, basically.
Mhm.
You can put in how much you want to pay. If it's $0, there are $0, as Jamy alluded to. If you want to do it on site, you can do it on site, but we'll include the link. Uh, 3-4 clicks and you'll have somebody in front of you ready to get you certified, and it's up to you to say yes or no at that point. Jamy Conrad, thank you so much for being here, for sharing, teaching us, just giving us the gift to really understand how we can support our teammates better. It means a lot that you're here today.
I really appreciate you making the space for it. Not all organizations are willing to do that. So that speaks volumes to what you guys are doing, and you specifically. Thank you, Justin.
Cool. Yeah, you got it. Thank you. If you're on and listening right now, and if you're on a people or HR team, or an operations leader, or a CEO for that matter, at a company under 5,000 employees, please consider a demo of Bereave. When people think about bereavement at work, they typically think about policy, time off, in an EAP. They think about those things. Those are the most common responses that we get, but it is so much more than that. It's mental health support. It promotes equity and inclusion. It furthers retention and productivity. It can help really define your culture. A lot of what Jamy alluded to, just as with mental health first aid certification. If you're working on any of those things that I just mentioned, please come and see how Bereave can support you. It's not a big sales pitch. Hopefully it opens your eyes and you can take some things away, whether you're a customer or not. In 3 weeks, we're going to be back with a panel discussion with 3 more very courageous people and very generous people that raised their hands a few weeks ago to volunteer to talk about their story of loss and how it impacted their relationship at work. We did one a few weeks ago. It was a huge hit. We have a list of almost 50 more people who raised their hand. These are the next 3 up, and we're going to continue to do that. So we'll be back in 3 weeks with that. Until then, be safe, be good. And Jamy, thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Justin.